They say the internet never forgets, but sometimes it remembers too much. In mid-2022, a cybersecurity researcher stumbled upon something so massive, so shocking, that it blurred the line between surveillance and science fiction. A database, not just any database, one containing the personal records of 4 billion people. 4 billion. That's more than half the population of the planet. And here's the twist. It wasn't even locked, hidden, or encrypted. Nope. It was just sitting there, online, open to anyone who knew where to look. The story begins with Bob Diachenko, a name that echoes across the cybersecurity world like a digital detective. He's known for uncovering massive leaks, the kind that make companies panic and IT departments break into a cold sweat. One day, while scanning the internet for exposed databases, as he often does, something caught his attention. An Elasticsearch server, publicly accessible. No password, no firewall. In the world of cybersecurity, that's like leaving your bank vault open with a sign that says, "Free money inside." But what Diachenko found inside wasn't money. It was data oceans of it. Each record contained names, addresses, national ID numbers, birth dates, phone numbers, even location data tied to surveillance cameras. It was as if someone had taken the entire population of China, put them under a microscope, and uploaded the results to the internet. The deeper he went, the more eerie it got. Some entries mentioned face capture data. Others included GPS coordinates, timestamps, and even notes that looked like law enforcement tags. It wasn't just a breach, it was a digital panopticon, a window into how surveillance worked at scale. Bob estimated the number of records, 4 billion. At first, even he didn't believe it. He cross-checked, verified, and sampled different sets. The data was consistent. Real names, real IDs, real people. Each record connected to a Chinese citizen from the smallest rural towns to the biggest cities like Beijing and Shanghai. But there was something else. Many records seemed connected to facial recognition systems, possibly from police surveillance databases. China's surveillance network is known to be one of the most advanced in the world, blending AI, CCTV, and real-time facial tracking to monitor everything from traffic violations to public gatherings. Now imagine that system exposed, for anyone anywhere to browse. As Bob dug deeper, he realized this wasn't just some random collection of user profiles, it was a data monster. The database weighed in at over 631 gigabytes, containing 16 massive collections, each one representing a different slice of everyday life in China. One folder labeled WeChatid DB held more than 800 million records people's WeChat IDs, usernames, and contact information. Another folder, Address DB, exposed 780 million physical addresses linked to individuals and their phone numbers. Then came Bank, about 630 million records containing names, card numbers, and personal identification data. A folder named Three-Factor Checks included roughly 610 million entries with national ID numbers, phone numbers, and full names used for verification on financial or government platforms. And it didn't stop there. There was a WeChat info section with 577 million logs, timestamps, message metadata, connection IDs. Even a collection tagged ZFBKTGB, shorthand for Alipay, holding 300 million financial account records. Sprinkled among them were other folders referencing insurance data, employment history, gambling sites, vehicle registrations, pension funds, and even a mysterious dataset labeled TWDB, possibly tied to Taiwanese networks. Each dataset on its own was concerning, but altogether, it was an identity reconstruction machine. An analyst later described it as a centralized aggregation point, a place where everything about everyone could be queried in seconds. SpyCloud, another cybersecurity firm that later reviewed the database, estimated there were more than 10 billion unique data points drawn from 1.7 billion distinct individuals after removing duplicates. The structure of the files told its own story. Some column names were misspelled like ID card, with 2 Ds. Others placed gender data where ID numbers should be. That suggested this wasn't a clean, purpose-built government system. It was a Frankenstein of data, a mashup of many smaller databases pulled from different sources, likely merged in a hurry. Whoever built it wasn't just collecting, they were aggregating, maybe for analytics, maybe for profiling, maybe for surveillance. It wasn't a small breach, it was a national privacy meltdown. The irony? The database seemed to belong to the very kind of system designed to monitor others not to be monitored. As one cybersecurity analyst joked, the watchers got watched. Word spread fast. Cybersecurity forums buzzed with disbelief. Headlines erupted across major outlets. China's government, known for being extremely secretive about internal affairs, didn't comment immediately. But within hours, the exposed database was quietly taken offline. Gone. Just like that. Once the discovery was reported, things moved fast. Within hours, the database vanished, pulled offline without a trace. There were no banners, no warnings, no server under maintenance messages, just gone. But that quiet takedown raised even more questions. Who owned it? A private firm? A government contractor? A rogue developer? No one ever claimed responsibility. Bob and other analysts found no system headers, no identifying labels, nothing linking it directly to an organization, just neutral field names and Mandarin tags. The only clue was the scale, and that pointed to something much larger than a typical company. One theory suggested the system could be part of a national-level surveillance or verification project, possibly tied to law enforcement or telecom analytics. Another theory? That it was an unofficial data broker's archive, used by smaller agencies or private firms to query citizen information. But no one knows for sure because the window of exposure was so short, and once it was gone, it stayed gone. That's what makes the story chilling. There's no record of how long it was online, who might have accessed it, or how many copies were made before it disappeared. In cybersecurity terms, that's called a ghost breach, something that appears suddenly, shocks the world, and vanishes before anyone can do a full forensic sweep. And yet the consequences live on. Because once that much personal data leaks even briefly, it can be duplicated, archived, or sold indefinitely. Think about it. Every one of those 4 billion records could feed identity theft, social engineering, fraud, or AI deepfake training. Your national ID becomes your greatest weakness. Your address becomes your footprint. And your face? It's now part of someone's data set. The irony was painful. The same technology meant to watch over citizens ended up exposing them all. But the internet has a long memory, and researchers had already documented everything. What made this so extraordinary wasn't just the size of the breach, but what it represented. This wasn't a hacker stealing from a private company. It was a nation's own surveillance data, left unlocked, exposing how deeply integrated personal tracking had become. Imagine having a file that contains every place you've been, every camera that's seen you, every number tied to your name, and then that file ends up online. Now multiply that by 4 billion. That's not just data leakage, that's digital nakedness. The breach wasn't traced back to a known hacker group. There were no ransom notes, no dark web auctions. It seemed purely accidental, a misconfigured server left public by someone who probably didn't even realize the scale of what they'd done. A simple mistake, a forgotten password field, and suddenly, the biggest data breach in human history. Sometimes it remembers too much. Cybersecurity experts warned, this is a global problem. Every government, every tech company, every social media platform all collect massive amounts of personal information. And most of them are only one misconfiguration away from disaster. It's like living in a house made entirely of glass and then realizing you've been live streaming your every move to the world. This breach showed the world what surveillance looks like when it fails. When privacy isn't just violated, it's obliterated. And it sparked a bigger question. If a system powerful enough to monitor an entire population can be accidentally left open, who's really safe? As one researcher said, the question isn't who's being watched anymore, it's who isn't. Months after the breach, the story faded from the headlines. The server was gone, the files deleted at least, officially. But cybersecurity experts know better. Once data leaks, it's never truly gone. Somewhere in some corner of the web, those records might still exist, copied, archived, analyzed. And for the billions of people whose names were inside that database, they'll never even know they were part of it. That's the scariest part. Not the exposure itself, but the invisibility of consequence. People didn't get an email saying, "Hey, your identity was part of the world's largest surveillance breach." There was no compensation, no apology, no awareness campaign. Just silence. And that silence says a lot about the digital age we live in, where we trade privacy for convenience, surveillance for safety, until someone forgets to lock the door. In the end, the colossal Chinese database leak wasn't just a cybersecurity story. It was a mirror reflecting our collective vulnerability in the age of data. We built a world powered by information, and in doing so, we created our own surveillance machines. Machines that see everything, remember everything, and sometimes forget to log out. Because when your system can watch billions, you better make sure it's not being watched back. In a world where data is power and privacy is fragile, you don't just need protection, you need awareness. That's where Telarus comes in. We're not just another cybersecurity company, we're your digital shield. From advanced breach detection to real-time monitoring, Telarus helps organizations and individuals stay one step ahead of the unseen threats shaping our world. Because in the era of constant surveillance, your best defense is knowledge and preparation. So, if you value your privacy, your data, and your peace of mind, visit Telarus.com today. Join the movement and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the stories, strategies, and secrets that keep you safe in the shadows of the digital world. This was the story of the 4 billion eyes. A reminder that in the world of data, sometimes the biggest leak doesn't come from hackers, but from ourselves.